Folks, we have an incredibly special day today because Crusader Kings 3 just announced Chapter 5, the upcoming content for 2026, and I don't know how to describe it other than that they went into my dreams at night while I was sleeping and took everything that I've ever wanted. We are talking about trade, both as a republic but also as an independent merchant. We're talking about trade goods. We're talking about Chalcedonian Christianity, about the church split, about archdioceses. We are talking about religion being reworked in a way like we have never seen it before. This is everything that is coming in Chapter 5 in this year. Chapter 5 is coming with 4 content drops. We're specifically talking about 2 that are already live, and then the core expansion called By God Alone, having everything to do with the church and religion. That comes in September, and then of course in November we're looking at Silk and Silver, a DLC that does everything about trade, merchant republics, independent merchants, and maybe most importantly actually brings systemic elements to CK3. We're talking resources, dynamic trade routes, we're talking roads. All of this we're going to talk about in this video, so make sure to listen. Now, if you want to purchase this content, then hey, make sure to use my link in the description or buy it in the Paradox store on your own volition, but enter the code OneProudBavarian, all small and all together, as you check out. I get a commission there and you of course get the game. Now look, I can hardly actually hold myself back because what we saw here was amazing, and I essentially immediately want to tell you about it. Now, for starters, and in the more generalist bracket, let me just tell you about Chapter 5 in general. We're looking at something that is a little bit different from the previous years of DLCs. They've changed the format anyway quite a bit. We used to have flavor packs and then we got core expansions, but after the disaster that was the event pack for Coronations last year, they seemingly have decided to just not do event packs at all anymore. I personally think they've never been that popular. I think they never quite got to where people wanted them to be. And Coronations, of course, was uniquely terrible. I still think there is so much wasted potential in that DLC, but they have at least fixed it up somewhat. Now, I will tell you, obviously it looks a little bit drab here. We're looking at content coming only in September and November. Already now we have a music pack and indeed a crown pack, so an art pack basically. So that means Q3 and Q4 are heavily stacked while Q1 and Q2 are basically nothing. I would hope that in the future maybe this changes, but that is where we are at for the time being. And I can tell you right now that knowing what is coming from the Steam descriptions, yeah, we are looking at the most systemic, the deepest, the most intense features that CK3 and Crusader Kings as a whole has ever implemented. So I think it is the right call to essentially say, we're not doing the minor event pack that we would then not give enough resources to and everybody would hate us again, both in and outside of the company. But most importantly here, I think, is that they today released 1.2. It has been sitting, of course, in a beta for quite some time. They have reworked a bunch of things like accolades. They are now a lot less annoying and more interesting. They didn't really deepen it too much, of course, as a system, but they changed it into something that is fun, that has a better UI, and that kind of just works. I will tell you right now that for me, the highlight of 1.2 is without a doubt everything that they have done about the ledger. This was done by Agami. You might know him. He has made some amazing mods, like for example the full screen barbershop. They collaborated with him, and what we get is one of the best ledgers ever made. You can actually go ahead and resort things so easily, get a lot of information there that you previously just could never get. Great stuff. I hope that they work with him more going forward, maybe even hire him altogether. Alright, and this was the broad overview, and from now we shall move on to the Steam pages of all of this content so that we can examine just what they are cooking up and how good it is. We're going to talk about the mechanics, but we're also going to talk about history quite a bit because, man, this is easily the most exciting thing I have ever seen for Crusader Kings 3. My god, we truly live in a society. I am so happy with what is coming here. I really need them to stick the landing there. Anyway, let's start talking about symbols of authority, because we're gonna get these minor things out of the way, and then we can spend some time on By God Alone. I also got some exclusives. I also got some screenshots that I took from the trailer that you saw earlier, of course, that show some things, like, for example, the different archdioceses in, I believe it is 1066, I'm pretty sure it is. We're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about the situations that they're adding and the screenshots that they already showed us for those. But okay, let's start with this one right here. This is Symbols of Authority. It adds a couple of crowns. I will be honest with you. You can see right here, these are Byzantine crowns, Palatine crowns. We're talking about a Royal German crown and a couple of hairstyles. I will never ever be extremely excited about this. Let me correct this. I will never be excited about this. To be a little bit cynical here maybe, I believe it is Steam policy that makes it so that you need to give something to a season pass that gets released immediately if you want to work with season passes, which is obviously what Crusader Kings 3 does and how it maintains itself as a product that, you know, is profitable for Paradox. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you, this is fine. You're just going to grab these. They look good. You know, it is what it is. Next up, we have Songs of the Realm right here. This one right here, you can see, has Sanctus Polonaise. You can listen to them in the trailer as well and on the Steam page. I think music packs are nice. This one is already live. I, again, can only say that I absolutely trust the fella that has made these because he looks like he would make great music anyway. We're getting some of the very, very basic CK2 songs back. Florence comes to mind, England Anno 1066, and In Taberna, which is just insane that I know these by heart. We're also getting new arrangements. We're getting a Polish one, a Swedish one, a French, and another Swedish one. A little bit biased maybe, right? This is fine. I think it's good. Nothing wrong with this. Let's move on. Oh, now we're talking. Like I said, this is By God Alone, the core expansion for Crusader Kings 3 coming in September. It says officially here Q3 2026, but they said in the video themselves September. I already covered this DLC when they announced the general rough shape of it, I should say. I believe it is 1 or 2 weeks ago, right? And I covered the DLC right there. I was very excited and I had a couple of doubts about some certain things like archdioceses. This is a big topic. Just to bring this up from a historical point of view, when we look at, for example, Otto the Great, so the first actual emperor from Germany, not that he understood himself to be German in that context, but he ruled essentially over the restored Holy Roman Empire. His brother was a bishop, his son was a bishop, and they had massive influence on what happened in the realm. Not to mention that they also gave him a mandate to spread his realm further, both into the Albic Slavs, so we're talking Polabians and Sorbs, for example, but also over, for example, Bohemia, Hungary, we're talking Poland. The reason for this is that as you Christianize, essentially the church gives you a much, much bigger and more thorough mandate in ensuring that these people become good Christians. This brings you into essentially a father-son relationship, at least the way that the church understands it. Your bishop, being the head of the entire realm that neighbors you, makes a really good case for that realm being something that should belong to you. And that is exactly what would happen afterwards. Now, historically, I should say this also actually was the case with Denmark, but Denmark, Poland, Hungary, of course, became independent. They founded their own archdioceses, got their own archbishops and representatives towards the Vatican itself. Bohemia is the one that stayed close the entire time, ultimately becoming a massive, massive powerhouse right there. So that was something that I was talking about because it is a really big topic, and I said to myself, surely they're not gonna do it because it is too complex. They seem to be doing it, okay? Let's read what they're saying right here, and then we're gonna go through these individual points, of which there are quite many. Navigate through a medieval era with a rich religious life in By God Alone, a core expansion for Crusader Kings 3. Wrestle with sin as your ruler, try to live up to the tenets of their faith as you tangle with church authorities who have power on earth as well as heaven. Instigate or settle religious debates, negotiate the limits of crown and papal authority, and ponder the afterlife. Now I want to highlight one thing. In general, everything that is listed here is only the DLC. Obviously, this is the DLC's page, but that does mean that everything in the free patch isn't actually told to us unless it was told in the initial post they made, of course, a couple of weeks ago, or it is told to us later. So there is only more waiting rather than less. So, taking a look at it, playable theocracies, take control of landed realms headed by an archbishop or even the Pope himself. As the papacy, new resources of power and wealth will be at your disposal. This is insanely exciting. I want to already stopgap something here in case somebody goes, playable theocracies. That isn't dynastic. It's not really true. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe they're also allowing non-dynastic inheritance. It's quite possible indeed. But we are looking at these type of positions, theocratic positions. We're talking about bishoprics, archbishops, even much, much smaller levels, like being an abbot or an abbess. They were largely something related to noble families. This kind of comes down to noble families just having the funds to facilitate something, and then they also get that position. It's definitely a power move. It ensures that you have control over the funds. We see this extensively, actually, under Otto I, so Otto the Great, and his predecessors in particular. But they essentially take church control, not because, oh, this is me cynically doing this, but rather because that is the only way to have any level of control in East Francia at the time, modern-day Germany, of course, which was largely just an oral society. There was no state, there were no institutions, it was just the church that you could count on. And those positions that are so important for your reign, obviously you fill them with your relatives. We had, of course, his brother and his son. Both of those played a major role. The Archbishopric of Mainz was in their hands as well, right? We're talking at the end of the day about something that was quite dynastic. So if you were thinking, hey, I think this is bad, it doesn't fit the game, it actually totally does. It's a huge misconception, frankly, that Crusader Kings 2 started, that these theocracies weren't handled as quasi-house-owned / noble-owned situations. So this is really nice. It also seems as though they're adding something akin to a treasury, like we know it from administrative and, of course, the East Asian governments already, which you can then exploit as a ruler. I think it's cool. I think it is really, really neat that they're using that mechanic. I personally think that that mechanic comes with a lot of pitfalls, potentially just because it is difficult for the AI to handle, but no longer having all the money just go to the Pope, but rather it stays in certain dioceses, and that then can be something that you can either use as a bishop or you use it as the overlord of that bishop is, of course, massive. Next up, we have the Christian situation, a new persistent situation for Christian realms, allowing actions and decisions connected to the development and progress of the faith. You can participate in ecumenical councils to decide on religious tenets and beliefs. So this is huge. When we talk about the papacy and Catholicism, most people are actually thinking about the early modern period of this, where we're looking at a very centrally organized religion. Every king in Europe at that point has a very clear wire that goes all the way to the Vatican. That was simply not the case this early on. I talked about it at length about the Carolingians elsewhere, so I don't really want to expand on it too much, but what they are implementing here, oh, it's amazing, because what it means is that we finally get a situation that is somewhere akin to what the Carolingians, for example, really did. The Carolingians were the ones that held an unbelievable amount of church councils. Why did they do this? A, because they were religious. They were deeply afraid of the idea that they wouldn't pray correctly, that they would forfeit their souls and the souls of all those that serve them, and that if they did that, of course, disaster would befall them. Things were interpreted on an incredibly religious level. We, to a degree, already have this in legitimacy. Am I even in the frame, by the way? We have this on legitimacy as a level, but it's kind of minor. It really is a massive, massive thing with the way people viewed the world. And so what they did was, they held a ton of councils to try and bring their right into an alignment of what they thought was the right Christianity. This here sounds like there will be, as a Christian situation of course, right, specifically ecumenical councils related to everything going on with Orthodoxy, because if you remember, Chalcedonian Christianity now exists in 867, and in 1066 it no longer exists, right? So these councils will probably govern this, but I hope that we also get something, or a major thing basically, for creating and maintaining and changing our very own rights. This is the right approach. It was a constant discussion. Faith is a living thing. The way we view Christianity in this period is completely incorrect if we kind of take into account only the early modern situation. Most people are like, oh yeah, this is a cardinal, he's super important. They weren't always important. The influence that the papacy essentially gained over the centuries was hard fought for, and it wasn't always the only model. It ultimately became the only model, and as there then was a relatively strict kind of overlord situation, not that they were like a Christian government, I suppose, but they were, at the end of the day, the hegemon to a degree. That is, of course, something that can spark religious unrest, you get the Reformation, and so on and so forth. Getting a systemic approach to just that, to centralization and decentralization, to people shifting away and shifting closer to what is the consensus, what is the Vatican, and so on, just amazing. I am really looking forward to this. I can't believe that they've done this. Unbelievable stuff, because what we're looking at here now is the very first time in gaming, and probably in pop history depiction ever, of what it was like to be an early European Christian. I stress European here in one context, and that is that the Western Church, as we know it from Catholicism, was effectively formed and molded kind of under the Carolingians, which you can now finally do. It's insane. I mean, okay, the molding is mostly over in 867 when the Carolingians are already in decline, of course, but we are looking at something that was just pivotal, that is a core element to the existence of the Europeans right there. It is incredible stuff. I'm very much looking forward to it. We also got heresies, religious rites that diverge too much, I assume, with the councils right there. From the standard faith, steal power and wealth from the church, so that is how you can keep it under your control, and maybe declared heretical, forcing you to either conform or rebel. This is huge. So, what we have to understand on a historical level is that essentially people were constantly not fully aligned with Rome. We obviously see this kind of shift, and even then you had big differences between, for example, Italy and Germany. It's one of the big things that really upset Martin Luther, actually. But it becomes more standardized over time, but there are different rights. There are different rights today that are fully aligned. You wanting to do something differently is not inherently something where the church goes, you are a heretic. It wasn't like this, right? We live in a society, there is no instant connection, there's no instant notification or kind of messages that will reach you. It will take months, people will mull it over, they will ponder things, things will shift over generations into something that is not recognizable to, for example, the central canon in Rome, in the Vatican, and now we have this reflected here as well. I know that I'm talking a lot of history, but this is so exciting to me because it's been a long time since it felt to me like CK3 is doing something like this. This is, yeah. So I hope that you can forgive me there. But essentially what we're looking at here now is a much more natural relationship of a decentralized Christianity. If you are the Pope, you might even try to centralize it further and further because that will strengthen your position. But largely, by and default, people will go their own way. We then see, of course, the full culmination, not just in rights, but basically in the full split between East and West right here. The Great Schism. In the 867 game start, the Christian Church will eventually reach a crossroads for the faith. This can result in the Great Schism separating Western Catholicism from Eastern Orthodoxy. So we have this process, at least from the way it reads to me, both on the big level between Constantinople and Rome. And for this now, I can already tell you that in 867, 868, it already is full underway. There is a lot of dissonance. In 867, we have the Synod, the Council of Constantinople, where the Emperor decides that he can replace the Patriarch as he sees fit without any input from the Pope, which is of course not acceptable because in the West, they insist that with him being the inheritor of St. Peter's seat in Rome, this means that, well, he plays or should be playing a much more important role, the first among equals, right, and ultimately become the head of the faith altogether. And in 868, right after the Synod of Worms is held by Ludwig the German, who you can play, who is in the game, of course, and this Synod essentially just states, yep, what they did in Constantinople 1 year before, we do not support this. It was also otherwise an important Synod. I was reading about it literally just yesterday, actually. But essentially, Ludwig the German was very interested there in some claims being processed and his right in when it comes to how can he interact with the clergy, but also everything related to, for example, criminal law and how they stand on this stuff. Super important stuff that they did there, and it is in full swing already. The Great Schism is a long-lasting kind of thing that really showcases this on a grand level, right? We have West versus East. And if you are Ireland and you have a different right, you can have the same thing. It might be declared heretical at some point soon after. This is cool stuff. It is the most systemic thing Crusader Kings 3 has ever done, I think, since everything related to diseases, if you ask me. And then, of course, we are looking at this also from just a historically very interesting thing. Because, like I said, not a single game has depicted Christianity this adequately. Medieval society this... Okay, maybe Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, outstanding stuff, but that's also like late medieval already, right? This is insane stuff what they're doing right here. Even more insane that it's in, I didn't think that they would do it, monastic holy orders. Centers of both research and theological power. Monastic holy orders offer potent bonuses to those who host their headquarters. Chief amongst their offerings is spiritual fulfillment. For their prayers protect secular rulers from eternal damnation. So spiritual fulfillment is a mechanic that will come in the free patch, right? If you hadn't caught up with this yet, basically it is all about the question of how happy are you with your character and your life when it comes to your religion. You can change the tenets to make that more fit and so on and so forth. The monastic holy orders are insane for one reason and one reason only. What we are looking at here is one of the most impactful elements of this entire period. I really only have to name one thing, I suppose, and that is Cluny, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, and the Gregorian reforms. Monastic holy orders, if I heard this correctly in the video, is all about them having their own right as well, and hopefully that bouncing back all around the world, all the other rights, of course, but also the central authority of the church, maybe impacting it if one of the popes comes from one of these monastic holy orders. As I understand it, monastic holy orders are not playable, at least it hasn't been mentioned, but they play a big role because you can be their patron, they will be based where you are, and of course they will do massive works for keeping your family and their names in their prayers. Really interesting element right there. This is one of the major things that had been done. The most important thing that we can keep in mind today is that these people really believe this. And monastic holy orders here are a great case for this because this was one of the primary things, the way that East Francia, for example, organized itself in the time where it essentially had nobody that was literate. The way they did it, and I specifically am thinking here of the Battle of Riade, where they defeated the Hungarians before the actual definitive defeat against the Hungarians or the Magyars in the Battle of Lechfeld. But essentially the Battle of Riade had a synod right before it, and in that synod they decided that every person in the East Francian realm should donate a dinar or something that is worth a dinar so that they can be kept in the prayers of the monks all over the realm. And we see a huge increase of inscriptions on who they are praying for, essentially. So they essentially use the synod and the donations to bless themselves for the battle to come against the Hungarians. Ultimately, they won, of course, and the church money was able to then build a whole lot more infrastructure. So I hope, of course, that this plays a big personal role, that donations to the church and also depositing my relatives in those locations is actually something that's quite worthwhile. Again, they also did this very much in the early medieval period there already. Ultimately, I really hope just that these will influence with their rights and with how much they have been sponsored, both the rights, so the tenets of the right where they are located, let's say the Frankish Rite, for example, but also the ultimate church authority in the Vatican if one of theirs makes it to the top of it. I can't even, because what I'm saying isn't even me just making this up. This is amazing to me. Every time we have these videos, normally I go, yeah, it would be nice, but it's not happening. And now I'm like, it's probably happening. It's probably happening. Because the entire thing is designed for it to be happening. That feels amazing. Let's talk about this actually. Changes to religious tenets, revisions to the tenet system in CK3 now center characters' relationships to their faith, what is appropriate behavior within that faith. Follow heretical beliefs that push the boundary of what is accepted, or have your personal preferences adopted and accepted through internal church politics. Right, so this is how you essentially relieve spiritual fulfillment pressure. If you are extremely in breach of something, you can just legalize it. I hope that it isn't so easy to just do something insane, like turning the entire church into cannibals. Obviously, they're gonna have some meme stuff in there, but what I mostly want to see here is relatively normal things that are just currently treated poorly, so that you either change your right, or you go ahead and you change the church itself. Lastly, of course, we have the spiritual fulfillment system. Oh, I thought this was free. Is it actually in the DLC? So I guess it's not actually free at all. My bad. Traits, actions, and religious tenets work together to paint portraits of characters' inner spirit and spiritual life. Sinful or virtuous actions are not merely a concern for stress, but can also affect relationships with God and concerns about the afterlife. Yeah, this was one of the primary things that they did. We have major fights, basically, between the church and secular rulers, and the secular rulers at no point want to fundamentally question the power and the role of faith, because this is a constituent element of the way that they see the world, right? Afterwards, here we have archdioceses, new clerical titles that have religious authority over a geographical region independent of the secular ruler's lands. I will tell you right here, I hope that this will enable you to essentially say, hey, by the way we govern, the way we run this, does include this. As in, if I'm the king of Germany and the archdiocese of Mainz, for example, includes Bohemia, I want Bohemia. Because those are the kind of claims that they made historically. That is how you got permission and the kind of task for missionary work. And if they use this right here, then you being Bohemian, Polish, Hungarian, Danish, like I said, and creating your own archdiocese is a massive step towards independence permanently from your bigger neighbor. We do have this map right here, so this should be 1066 and 867. The papacy actually look differently. Of course, we can see Benevento right there. And then we see, actually, I'm not sure that you can see it. Let me turn this off. We can actually see all the way down here the Archdiocese of Reggio di Calabria as well, which of course then happened in 1066. And for that, I just want to stress that this actually was a major element as well. We had Roger, Count Roger, who was conquering Sicily at the time. And he was essentially setting up bishops and priests without the permission of Rome. They were legitimized afterwards, but he did this because he wanted to spread his influence. Again, we see the kind of dual connection here between the secular ruler and the local archdiocese, and then, of course, both of them going towards the papacy. This is insanely cool. We can see that Bohemia is still under the influence of Mainz. We can see Salzburg. I don't know what to tell you. I think up there should be Magdeburg, if I had to guess. Looks relatively small, but then is, of course, mostly concerned with the Elbic Slavs. This is awesome. I hope that taking control of these is something that a duke can also do, maybe even a count. So essentially, we have the puppet system, more on that in just a second. But you can see just how small they are, how much you can change things up by just being in control of one archbishop, right? If you're in control as a puppet master of the archbishop of, for example, Cologne, Mainz, or Trier, then you can change the pathway of that particular archdiocese. You can take the money of that. But I don't even know what to say. I didn't think they had it in them. Okay, Asche auf mein Haupt. Okay, what can I say? This is incredible stuff. This is, yeah, it's crazy good. Now, boom. Now moving back into the actual descriptions here. I'm so happy. I'm just so happy. College of Cardinals. The Pope can appoint cardinals across Christendom. But the struggle between secular and religious authority never ends. Secular rulers can use their power to influence the appointment of cardinals and the direction of the church. So it should be said here that they stated as well in the previous dev diary, of course, that the College of Cardinals should develop into, you know, or between the two extremes where it's like they can be from anywhere in Christianity or they mostly come from Italy. That is something that should be determined as they go, right? So this is something that is also relatively fluid, or at least planned to be fluid, which is awesome, because I have always criticized that this was one of the things where I was really anti in CK2. CK2's College of Cardinals, to be clear, it was basically just a money dump. They were saying players have too much money, put it in there, that's it. The way they handled it was essentially just a depiction of the College of Cardinals in EU4, or as I would say, in the modern period. The early modern period determined a lot about the way that CK2's and CK3's church and Christianity is designed. This finally does it correctly. It's awesome. Next up, we have dynamic holy sites, which is something that I mean, what can I say? I've been saying that since a video that I had for Imperator Rome, which cathedrals can become the focal point for reverence of specific saints or other holy figures, leading to them becoming holy sites. Faiths can now dynamically change their holy sites as they grow and change over time. Yeah, thanks. That's amazing. We have so many cases of local pilgrimage routes that didn't actually take off, that didn't become something that was done by everybody in Christianity, but that were practiced by the local population. We even have the case, by the way, especially in the country triangle of Bavaria, including Austria in this case, Hungary and Bohemia, we have the case there where a lot of the peoples that were kind of prayed towards here weren't actually canonized saints. They were just holies. So in German, literally just Heiliger. This is really interesting. So essentially in the region, you have this big history of all of this kind of reverence given to these people before the canonization, or maybe even without ever gaining canonization for them by the Catholic Church directly. It's possible now. I don't know what to say. I'm a stickler. I don't think I'm negative at all. I think I'm an optimist in life. Whenever a new DLC was announced and came out, I was like, they're probably not going to do. No, that's probably not. They would have said it if it was coming. They're doing everything. I basically have nothing. I can already tell you, the one thing that I am pointing out is that I'm not seeing anti-popes. But with this system of puppets, I'm pretty sure anti-popes exist. They're just going to be a free feature, so they're not mentioned here. And they become really good by making them into puppets. I'm pretty sure that's where we're headed here. Anyway, let's talk about cathedrals. Can become the focal point for reverence of specific saints or other holy figures, leading to them becoming holy sites. I can't believe that they're saying holy figures. I guess you're talking about Mother Mary as well, maybe archangels, that kind of thing, right? Yeah, that's amazing. What do you want me to say? Puppets. In order to interact with the political machinery of the church, secular rulers will be able to puppet clerical characters so they can act on their behalf. This whole system is the best thing they've ever told me about. They really need to nail it. I also hope, and this is something they haven't mentioned at all, and I did not see it anywhere, I hope that they apply the way they handle rites. So we're talking about the Christian church here in particular, right, with the Carolingian rite, for example, that they also do this to Islam. I think Islam still would need even more work afterwards, but I think that it could massively benefit from rites that eventually spiral out of control and declare, for example, their own imam or their own caliph, but before that were aligned and subdued basically by, for example, the caliph in Baghdad or the caliph in Cairo in 1066 under the Fatimids. I hope that they do this to Islam as well. They're not saying it because that would, of course, be free content, but yeah, this DLC coming September reads like a 10 out of 10 feature proposition here, right? How they implement it is a different thing, but other than anti-popes, I have nothing to say. You might be saying, what about the relation of the Holy Roman Empire with the Pope? To which I say, that's a good point. They have it in the next DLC. So let's talk about the next one. You know what? I'm getting tired of winning. I'm already contented. I'm already calm. And I'm not asking for any other things. And then they come around the corner with silk and silver. So this is the major expansion. This one is going to be bigger than By God Alone, and it is all about trade and merchant republics. You notice I separate here merchants and merchant republics because they are separate. There are merchants in merchant republics with this DLC, but they are also independent merchants, which you will also be able to interact with. This is really interesting. You can read so many papers and books. Chris Wickham, of course, very important. There is I believe she is English, an English writer related specifically to Amalfi. Everybody knows about Venice and the exploits that Venice made. Nobody knows about Genoa and Pisa, for example, sacking Mahdia, the town that was the big kind of maritime center of North Africa and Tunisia under the Fatimids. all of this plays a big role and it belongs in here. Now, I want to say one thing before we jump into this, before we go, okay, let's talk about this DLC, and that is the topic of boats. They haven't said anything, and maybe they're coming, but they haven't said anything about adding boats or naval battles or whatever, and I will, and I always have, be an opponent of them being omnipresent as its own fleet. I'm saying this while Victoria 3 is very soon coming out, of course, with its naval DLC. Let me just say here, if you wanted boats, maybe they're coming with this DLC. We have no indication for it, to be honest with you, but I will tell you that a boat implementation of what they're doing here, it shouldn't really be physical boats. There weren't any standing navies in virtually all polities of this time because they weren't necessary. The way that we today think about, and I'm going to do this bit again, the way that we think about naval supremacy and safety and hegemony, early modern. It's basically an early modern thing. Yes, the Byzantines, of course, had a navy, the Fatimids had a navy, the Sicilians, the Norman Sicilians had a navy, although only really for one generation, but virtually everyone was busy in this medieval period with navies that either were being built or raised as they saw fit, as they had to cross the ocean, right? Or as they went on and built a merchant naval empire. So naval battles aren't really something that should or could be prioritized just based on a historical level. However, of course, having a theoretical merchant navy that you can then utilize to do your merchant routes is something important. I think they're probably going to be adding this, but not as units. At least if I had to guess. Now let's take a look at this. Build your dynasty through trade and money lending as you lead a merchant family through the medieval era in silk and silver. A major expansion for CK3. Start as a humble trader, ingratiate yourself with the local authorities as you expand your business interests, and maybe even seize power in a republic. So of course, this is the merchant stuff. At the end of 2026, we're going to be looking at merchants and theocracies being playable. Let's take a look at what they're doing specifically, because I can talk about this for days, for ages, for million years, but let's just see what they're doing before I start going on a tangent about trade and the Chirogenesa. Merchant government, in an entirely new playstyle. Lead a merchant family at the head of a trading company, rising from obscurity to greatness and using your wealth to advance the fortunes of your family. So they are specifically here saying trading company, and then later on, further down below, we're talking about republics. This is a big distinction, it's a very important one. You had important families that later on, of course, again, early modern period dominates everybody's thoughts here. We're talking about the Fuggers, we're talking about everybody that became an important faction that you see in Europa Universalis 5. This merchant government, as they described it in the video, is essentially you being settled with a domicile somewhere at a big kind of city, but you're not a part of the city government, right? They're also actually changing the makeup of locations of, I say location like it's EU5, of provinces, of baronies, there we go, of baronies and of counties in Italy to give you more of these cities so that you can be settled there and compete against others. So this is a government that exists to compete with other merchants and make a lot of money, form a company, basically become an impactful family. You can establish trade routes, seek out profitable routes, slowly expanding the reach of your trade empire as your family grows in renown and wealth. I imagine this kind of like an agent-based system where, let's say I have 5 sons and those 5 sons go out and maintain certain trade routes. Maybe I send them to a different city to actually run our offices there, right? These are the things that I imagine. They're mostly maybe a management type game. Very interesting to see. Really cool feature that we have this kind of just general trading thing. These are obviously the ones that also majorly maintain the actual trade relations that we have with others. I hope that if I, for example, am the king of Bohemia and I have Prague and I want more trade, that I have to benefit the burghers so that I get more merchants to live in my city, more trade capacity, and boom, I can get more goods as I need them. Then we have competition. Push out other families, undermining their trade profits and locking them out of valuable markets. This was obviously massive. We can also lobby for power, use your money and intrigue to influence nobles and royalties, seeking patrons who can strengthen your trade empire. I assume this might be along the lines of what Crusader Kings 2 has already done, where you can basically say, hey, can you declare a war, can you pressure, in whatever way they might do this, so that I get certain rights here and destroy, for example, the trade posts of another family. This really cool. Then, of course, you're also working with monopolies. Use your political influence to gain exclusive rights to routes or goods. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Very, very cool stuff. Improve your mansion. Direct your family from your grand house, improving its grounds and establishing a base for your mercantile efforts. Awesome. I wonder whether you can roll your way into becoming noble or whether you can roll your way into becoming a merchant republic as well by actually, even if your domicile isn't quite there, just taking over the politics of a republic. Now here we then also actually have republics. So again, these are separate. A new government type that focuses on merchant families competing for power and wealth in a range of historical republican models. Laws and assemblies. Set the constitution of your republic, asking the assembly to pass laws that control the terms of leaders and uses of the state treasury. So again, we are working with a treasury. Trade leagues. Through the new trade system, you can join other republics in alliances with both commercial and military benefits. Mostly thinking about the Hanse here, of course. Long-established leagues could become confederations, a larger and stronger republican form. Awesome that they are thinking about it this way. Maybe also adequate for Southeast Asia? Not sure. Historical Italian flavor. Take part in civic carnivals to celebrate the greatness of your republic. Watch the historical struggle in northern Italy between the Guelphs and Ghibellines as political factions lead to open warfare. So we are getting Guelph and Ghibelline as an actual system. We are getting carnivals. We are getting flavor here. And you might say, okay, this sounds nice, but it all sounds very Crusader Kings 2. Okay, I am a merchant republic or just an independent merchant. What's the difference? I go to a guy, I say, can I make money? I make more money. And that's where you're wrong. That is where I was wrong. I think I said ages ago when I filled out that survey for what do I want in Crusader Kings 3, I said to myself and on camera at the time, I think it would be interesting if we got some goods, some resources. They shouldn't be too complex, but it would be nice if we got them. Did I believe at the time that they would do that? I didn't. And now, look at where we are. So first of all, if I turn myself off right here, take a look in the bottom right, you can see the symbol for Christianity. Maybe this is a council, maybe this is just the general situation between Western and Eastern Christianity. And then you can see Guelphs and Ghibellines, right? Because there is the keys of the papacy of St. Peter. And then, of course, you can see the German eagles. So this is going on here. This is inside. And what do we have here? We are looking at surplus and need for stone. Green is surplus. Red is need. At least that is what I would assume. We also see lumber and we see salt. There have to be so many more goods, but the way they already described it, and I can describe it to you right now, is insane. It looks as if we are getting a full building rework, a resource integration, and maybe even a rework of baronies themselves. I'm not so sure about this because they didn't say anything about this, but they did say a building rework. The way it seems to work is that every county has a potential for certain resources. So let's say you have salt and lumber. If you decide to produce salt, later on you can re-specialize into lumber, or you can actually split it even, right? So that you partially produce both of them. Then it looks as if the markets, and I can see the roads, oh my god, as if the markets are on the level of a duchy, right? Because it shows us where there is a surplus and where there is a need, and these are the duchy levels. I would recognize them wherever I am. I can see the roads from here, oh my god, I see them up there in Poland. I see this one. Oh, I see this is the Via Regi. Okay. So that means if I have a duchy that is incredibly... Think about this for a second. Oh, I love this. Think about this for a second, okay? You would sit down and you would say, I'm the Duke of Bohemia. I control Bohemia. I will be upgrading my duchy to specifically produce one particular thing, and then I give the rights to sell it to one family. They make a ton of money. I'm the biggest producer of it. Maybe I even get some certain benefits so that I specialize, I produce more of it more efficiently, whatever, right? And then it gets sold. This is a rudimentary system where I don't need to worry about the alignment of like, oh, where does it go? How do I make money? I just build something and then other actors take part in it. If I want to impact it as well, I can do it. We can see a trade deal in just a second, right? But the fundamental level here is a simple implementation of resources that will make it so if, let's say, I'm in a position where, oh, I need this or that resource because my people are starving, or maybe we are in a position where I need more silver just because, well, who doesn't love silver? I now have a reason to expand into a particular direction. I might want to do a power grab that is unfair and unjustified and costs me a lot of prestige or piety or whatever it might be, because I needed that resource more. At no point in Crusader Kings history did you ever think about resources. There was no inclination to think about this. Now, this is not a complex market system like Victoria 3 or EU5, but CK3 shouldn't have one. That's too complex. The way I see this is that this market can probably be connected to this market by an actor, so by a character. Which means you, as a character, decide to build here, a character carries the good over, then over here they have the good and they start buying it. This is probably needed to maintain buildings, right? It's a building rework, they mentioned this. This is probably needed to even build buildings in the first place, maybe even to build and maintain men-at-arms. And ultimately could mean that if you specialize in something and then somebody else does so as well and offers better conditions for that good, your entire money goes out the window. So much more interesting than what we have right now. You have never and will never see a building tall game from me on this channel because it is boring. There are 5 buttons, you click them all and you win. This sounds like fun. While still being so basic, so fundamentally not extremely intrusive, that you can just play Crusader Kings 3. You just play the normal game. Amazing. Let's move on. Holding Sprawl. roads. What can I say? What can I say? Amazing. I hope that these kind of also showcase like what buildings they're actually building here. Man, I hate that they're keeping the round nonsense. It's a good marker. It's like, this is a barony. But the fact that they're so round is very odd. But anyway, this right here is a assault route to Ishbilia. You can see we are buying in Salzburg. Funny. And selling in Venice. It costs us 5. We make 8 and monthly profit is 0.3. That is how you manage this. And you can see a trader right there, which is why I would assume that if you have a big trading family, right, the way this works is that you send your son, you send your family and so on into facilitating this. As I understand it, they are in a position where they're saying, as a landed ruler, you can interact with it, but there should be agents that take care of it. Let me take a look at this. Stone, salt, lumber, wine, furs, cloth, surely, you know, Flanders is calling. No idea what that is. Maybe silk. This looks like iron. And then this right here might be gold. If I had to guess, that is what I would see right there. These are basic levels of resources. I want to assure you, at least from my impression, we are not getting a giga overcomplicated system that is going to ruin the AI, and that if you like CK3 for being a character game, is going to ruin CK3 for you. It does not look this way, right? This is awesome. Oh, and you can even plan super long routes if you actually take a look at this, right? Maximum trade markets per trade route +2 means that if you have a great trader, he can boop, 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 run a really long route. And you yourself are only looking at the numbers. Everybody else is though like, oh, finally, I have salt in my Venice. I didn't have salt before. Fantastic stuff. Just actually amazing. Here, another screenshot of just roads. What can I say? The dream is here, my friends. I hope that they distinguish at least between like, basically, I wonder how they're built. Is it like an infrastructure project? Is it something where if I have a certain number of trade routes running for a certain time, they create this road? Do they go away at some point? Do we have the Roman roads that already were there in the game? I don't know, but I can tell you that this is what I need in my life. I don't even know what to say. A path paved with gold. I enter the local market as a free man. The cries of vendors can be heard from every street corner, intermingled with the clanking and banging of metals from nearby workshops. Everywhere I turn, there are carts with spiced wine crates, wool rolls, and sparrow cages being wheeled to and fro. This is where I will build my dynasty. My old realm passes to my erstwhile liege, Serene Doge Domenico, who has accepted my decision to leave his service. So it seems like you were a merchant house within Venice, and in this screenshot, became an independent merchant. Awesome. Then here, right here, we also actually have the Republican government form. We can see a little bit of an overview right here. Let's try to dissect what we can see right there. We see the general overview, the Serene Doge right there, so I guess that gives you information on who it is and what they want to do. Maybe they have like a mandate and an agenda as well, that would be cool. Patrician families over there, obviously. And then we have the assembly. We can see political factions, right? Venice's opinion, so the city of Serene Doge Domenico II. Obviously, your city being happy with you is pivotal. They will kill you if they are not happy. You can then also give arms in the capital. You have a succession law right there, as well as a top election candidate, and then you have a set of laws. Getting more actual laws here is amazing. I hope that eventually we're still getting like a proper overhaul of laws. That would be fantastic. Right now, it's really bare bones in anything that isn't just China, I believe, and basically, I guess, the Republicans right here. This is going to be the government. You're going to be a part of this. You can, of course, invest money. Classic stuff, how I would guess we already are used to from, you know, getting a position in be it China or in the Byzantine Empire. And then finally, we have the Guelphs and Ghibellines prelude, so we have one of the phases here of this situation. Currently in the phase in nomine domini, so I assume that this is basically papal supremacy. We can see who is winning and who is losing. You can already see it right there, and you have separate groups playing in Italy, especially in 1178, where until now, you had a whole bunch of cities that were unplayable and that would be eaten by one of the neighbors within 2 seconds, will actually become golded. I have nothing negative to say. That's weird. That's a weird thing. I think that's it. I don't think I have anything negative to say. We're getting resources. We're getting dynamic building. Way more interesting playing tall. We're getting merchant republics that can get monopolies and rights from other locations. They can unify in the confederation, forming the Hansa long term. We got roads. We got holding sprawl. We got religion. We got it all reworked. 2026 is my year. And yeah, folks, with that, make sure to play 1.2 right now. Pick up the link in the DLC with the link in the description. Anti-popes, I guess. Hopefully they confirm them, but I can't see them not being there. This is amazing. Love you. And have a good night. See you later, alligator.